Alright, Shamu, here we go. 3 videos of from me in one day. We're really putting the work in tonight. So, we've discussed the Ars Goetia, why it's not ours and why it's not Grimoire. Let's talk about why it's not Goetia by attempting in this video to create, to the best of my ability, a comprehensive definition of Goetia. So Goetia, refers to a practice that is rooted in ancient Greek traditions of sorcery, necromancy, and invoking spirits. The term itself derives from Goes, meaning sorcerer or enchanter, and is etymologically linked to the Gus, meaning lament or wailing. This association reflects the mournful, and this is all going to be straight from my notes because I got a lot to cover here, and I need to make this as exact as I can. This association reflects the mournful chanted invocations often used in ritual, especially those involving the dead or chthonic deities. In ancient Greek culture, Goetia was seen as a form of magic associated with manipulating supernatural forces, particularly through incantations, rites, and the summoning of spirits. Practitioners of Goetia would engage in necromancy via communicating with the dead to gain knowledge or insights, binding spells in order to influence others, or control events through the use of magical constraint and the invocation of spirits by calling upon daemones or chthonic entities for aid or power. Unlike the later ceremonial tradition that is codified in grimoires, ancient Greek Goetia was often considered an informal or earthy counterpoint to theurgia, or deity work, which I've got a whole thing about how we use that term nowadays, but that's beside the point. But that theurgia generally involved higher, more spiritual forms of magic aimed at communion with the divine. Are we rocking so far? We're going to get a little deeper into this. We're going to try and work this towards a working definition. So, Goetia can be understood as a family of chthonic, voice-led, and often transgressive ritual technologies that pursue practical outcomes by engaging the dead, underworld powers, and the liminal daemones. It is defined chiefly by its methods: crying out, chanting, adjuring, binding, bargaining, oath-making, and by its operative posture, which is petitionary and sometimes coercive rather than sacramental. In an attempt to make a characteristic profile of Goetia, you would include the centrality of the voice and heightened effect, the keening, the cries, the droning hymn, vocatives, the hissing sounds, the popping sounds, as we see in the Consecration to Helios. A consistent orientation to the chthonic and to thresholds, so graves, crossroads, caves, ruins, night, materials like ash, pitch, blood, lampblack, dark resin, and other dark resins. Very concrete aims: healing and harm, revelation, treasure, love, and estrangement, binding enemies, recovering what is lost, we already said finding treasure. The use of compulsion and contracts, so the adjurations, sworn oaths, written lead tablets, knots, nails, seals, promise of wages, threats of penalties. The presence of liminal mediators, the restless dead, psychopompic powers, and boundary spirits, while the practitioner acts as caller and broker, and a kind of ambivalent ethic where efficacy is prioritized. And it was highly stigmatized by the church authorities. So historically, in archaic and classical Greece, the Goes was a wailer and enchanter whose funerary lament and necromantic calling marked a socially suspect specialist distinct from the magos and from the theurgios. In Hellenistic and Roman eras, especially in the syncretic ritual handbooks, these techniques were fixed and elaborated through names, through vocus magicae, barbarous words, bindings, and night rites. Hard to say. antique philosophical and Christian polemic sharpen the contrast, associating it with daemonic compulsion. Renaissance reception of this narrows it tries to narrow it to the spirit license and grimoires, but we've gone full step away. So, because this starts to happen in the Renaissance reception, it narrows it to the spirit lies in grimoires, infernal catalogs, modern occult currents. Alright, my phone full on died. We're going to continue. Sorry, this. Modern occult currents have tried to rehabilitate and reinterpret the current, some reclaiming a chthonic or ancestral interface, and others trying to retain the binding paradigm in this. Now, several differentiations because of this are very helpful. Compared with theurgy, Goetia tends towards the compulsion and trafficking with the powers below, theurgy instead emphasizing ascent, communion with the divine. Basically the difference between being instrumental and soteriological. When you compare it with broader sorcery, Goetia is a subset that would be marked by the chthonic voice work, the liminal mediation. When you compare it with necromancy, we have a very heavy overlap, but necromancy is kind of seen as strictly traffic with the human dead for knowledge or power, and the Goetia can address underworld daemonis apart from the dead. All of this, it's a lot. It's very difficult to define this. I have tried my best. The easiest way, there is a minute diagnostic text or test that we can use with practicality. A rite can be considered plausibly Goetic when it shows at least 4 of the following elements: night or threshold setting, lament, chant, or other heightened vocal work, appeal to the dead or to other underworld spirits, binding or adjurational formulae, written or knotted constraints such as tablets, cords, or nails, transactional languages of oaths, wages, threats, or surety. If it can show at least 4 of these elements, we can, to the best of my definition, consider it Goetic. And when we apply this test to the Ars Goetia, it fails terribly. If you want Goetic stuff, that is fine to want to work Goetia. I think it is wonderful if people want to get into Goetia. But as I said at the beginning of this whole 3-part thing, 2026 coming up, let's leave the Ars Goetia in the past. Anyways, that is it for me for the night. May the ancestors bring you the sweetest of portents, and may you have the most wonderful of dreams. Shalom.